Everybody, this is Brenden here with Common Motor. It's common-motor.com on the internets. And today I'm going to give you a personal tour of my 1975 Honda CB360. I'm not worried about the K-Series on this because the 360, the K-Series isn't that important. This video is an update of a video I did about 8 years ago. We're gonna post a link up here in the corner if you wanna check it out. It's still on our YouTube channel. But from then to now, we're gonna show you all the updates I've done on the bike since that video. And for those of you who haven't seen it, this will be your first run through of my personal bike. So I was a car guy for a long time. I did the car thing for many years, and I had to kind of shelf the car thing because I ran out of money and space. And I wanted a project to work on, and a motorcycle came to mind. I had a buddy back at school who had an old Honda 350, and that kind of popped in my mind. So I started looking on Craigslist a long time ago for a 350 Honda, and I come across this bike called a 360, which I didn't know about. And I was like, well, it sounds like something pretty close to it. Saw the pictures of it. I said, that kind of looks like the bike that my friend had. Again, I didn't really know much about the motorcycle thing and the vintage Honda thing at all. So I went down to the south side of town and bought this pile of parts that resembled a motorcycle from an interesting fella named Ricky. I got a photo of me actually buying the bike with Ricky, and I guarantee you the photo was not staged. That actually happened in the moment. My friend Craig shot that picture when we went to go pick up the bike. And then from there, I had to figure out how to start piecing it together based on what limited knowledge I had of the bike and what limited resources were available at the time. I purchased the bike probably about 15 or 16 years ago. From now, it's 2020, so early 2000s is when I got the bike. It easily took me, even though I had been doing the car thing and knew about carburetors and engines and stuff, I had been doing all that kind of work. It took a little bit of a transition going from the car world to the bike world, and it still took me about 18 months before I was actually able to ride the bike for the first time, just down the street. That wasn't finished. That was just rideable-ish for some test riding up and down the street. So it was definitely a long, arduous process to get what should have been a pile of parts dismantled into a semi-complete running bike. The obviously of purchasing this bike and not having the information and resources needed to fix it up is what eventually evolved into the creation of Common Motor, right? So this bike is the reason why Common Motor exists, and that's why we're here making these videos, and that's why all you out there are watching the videos and working on your own bikes, because we all have to go through the same hoops and hurdles in getting our bikes up and running, and my experience was no exception. But hopefully we can make it a little bit easier for everybody with videos and parts and resources to make it happen, because when I did this one, there was nothing out there. I have a pile of parts because that's all it was, man. I think the question more is, what have I not changed on this bike? Because my personal 360 has served as the shop R&D 360 since the beginning of Common Motor. So pretty much every part we have for 360s has been tested on my personal bike. Here's a list of the things that I've changed on my bike. Starting up front, new tires, and I've run through several sets of tires over the years. I'm currently running the Heidenau's. Front brakes have been rebuilt several times, stainless steel piston, stainless steel lines. They were prototypes. Front forks rebuilt, aftermarket fork springs in the forks. Steering bearing has been changed out with tapered rollers. Aftermarket headlight bucket with a larger diameter lens and an LED bulb. Aftermarket bars, updated grips, kind of some stripped down controls, very basic. Currently running the smaller diameter master cylinder, kind of an R&D thing right now. Tank, an old tank I cleaned out. Rebuilt the petcock, rebuilt the carburetors many a time. Running pod filters on the bike. These are the prototype pod filters. Engine is pretty much stock. Gone through it, done the usual updates. A cam chain tensioner, cleaned it all out. Stainless steel bolts on the engine, clutch, things like that. Sprocket, chain, front and rear. aftermarket, many variations of that over the years. Built a custom battery box for a small SLA battery and aftermarket rectifier. A lot of rewiring going on with that. Aftermarket Icon rear shocks, rear hub, sprockets, bearings, brakes. Aftermarket mufflers, my original ones were pretty roached. And then some aftermarket turn signals and taillights, some eBay specials from a long time ago. As I mentioned previously, when I got this bike, it was far from complete. In fact, I would probably have said it's more of a parts bike than a complete bike, and so I did the hard way and turned a pile of parts into a running motorcycle. It was missing oh so many things when I got it, and I had to work with the resources I had available at the time. Of course, there was no common motor, there was no parts all over the internet like there are now, and I had to make it work at a junkyard stuff. So the salvage yards and pull parts off old bikes to make it work in a very kind of old school hot rodder fashion. I'm gonna start with the headlight. I know a lot of people start with that, but it's actually a big one because there's an old joke on motorcycle headlights. They have 3 settings: dim, dimmer, and off. So I'm running this larger 7-inch aftermarket headlight bucket with currently running an LED in it, but I haven't run a halogen bulb in the past, so you can actually change the bulb in and out. Since all my switches were destroyed over the years, I have a toggle switch so I can turn the headlight off and on. But most importantly, because my bike is kickstart only, I have the headlight off so I get max power to the coils when I kickstart it. Once the bike's running, flick it on and go. The original bars on my bike were all bent up, and I had come across this. These are actually Renthal bars, and they're a super bike bar, and actually was based off of these bars that I sourced the bars that we currently have on the common motor site, because they're identical in shape and size, because they're like the perfect balance of control, comfort, and style that works with the bikes. I really feel like this is kind of the ultimate bar shape for making all the pieces work together on the bike. The brakes have all been gone through, hydraulic front disc brake. I'm actually currently running a brand new 10mm master cylinder, so I get a little bit better braking control on it. It's an experiment. We're going to see if it's how well it works, but so far so good. Braided stainless steel lines. This is my original prototype version of the lines. I actually did them in blue, and as an early version, it comes down to the caliper here and actually still hooks to the factory hard line. Just had to make the mod later on where the line just runs straight to the caliper so we can bypass that part because there was no need for it. But as a first batch, that's how they came out, and that's what stayed on my bike, and it still works. Also, with the steering control, tapered roller steering bearings. It's a really common upgrade we talk about. I highly recommend it because the original ball bearings in here are usually chewed up and kind of crunchy, and this really smooths out the handling of the bike, so it's a great upgrade. And the forks, typical rebuild on the forks, but I am running the Icon Performance front fork springs that have a different rate to them, and it really, again, helps control the front end and improves the handling of the bike. So you can't see it, but huge upgrade over the factory springs. For years and years, I ran points in my bike, and points work just fine if you're willing to sit there and set them up. I wanted to upgrade to electronic ignition several years ago, and I tried a bunch of different systems, and I found out they were all kind of crap. So that's really what led us to develop the Shockwaves, because we needed a system that was going to be reliable to work on the bikes. And I am currently running and still running the original prototype version of the Shockwave that we developed a few years back. So it's still running strong, and I guess it's kind of a testament to how well the system came together. And my friend Lee made me this cool cutaway window here on my points cover, so you can actually see the Shockwave in action right here. And mine blinks with these red LEDs instead of the green and blue ones, because again, it was the original prototype. So my bike is kickstart only. I removed the electric starter many, many years ago, so I have a starter plug in here. And part of the reasons I wanted to reduce weight on the bike, and I felt like when the bike's well tuned, it'll start with the Kickstarter pretty reliable every time. I also am running a smaller battery in this little custom battery box I made. This is an SLA battery. It's basically just a mini lead acid battery is what it is. This is out of a security system, and an aftermarket rectifier to go along with it. And it's just enough battery to get the bike to fire on the kickstart, and once the bike's running, it'll maintain it. I am running pod filters on my carburetors, and more in particular, I'm running our angle pod filters. I know there's a lot of folks that say pod filters don't work on these bikes. The reality is they do. The angle pod filters, the reason we run them is because it allows for a smooth airflow transition into the front of the carburetor to actuate the slide properly. So it's really about how the air flows into the carburetor versus the filter material type. And the angle pod with the boot allows that to happen just like the way the factory air boxes do on the bike. So that's why it's a great upgrade option on a budget, especially if your bike was missing air filters, because my bike never had them to begin with. Out in the backside of my bike, I've been running the Icon fully adjustable shocks for a few years. I was really skeptical of them when I first came across it, but then I was talking with the owner of Icon, and he said, if you buy a set, you don't like them, I'll give you a refund. So bought a set, put them on my bike, and it made a world of difference. And if you're gonna be riding your bike some serious distance or keeping your bike for a long time, highly recommend it as an upgrade. They are fantastic, and I wouldn't go back to like the basic style shock because they're that good. Probably the best single upgrade I've done on the bike all around. I kept the original rear fender on my bike, but I wanted to kind of tighten up the rear end on it. So I got these mini turn signals years ago off of eBay. There's some no-name mystery thing. And then same with the taillight. Want something a little bit tighter and smaller. This is just, again, a generic special off eBay, but made it work with the factory mount points on the fender on the bike. You ready? Yep. One kick. One kick. I do have another camshaft profile that's a little bit more high performance camshaft profile I want to, haven't thrown in the bike yet. I have the cam grounds. I have to do some measurement specs on it to figure out am I going to destroy anything if I put the cam in there. And if it is a success, we'll be able to offer a slightly increased performance profile for 360, which that has the potential, but that's definitely a back burner level project at this time, but it'll happen eventually. Now, you know, I've ridden this bike a lot of places, and probably the furthest I've ridden it was I rode it from mid-Ohio back here to Houston a couple years back. I did that with William, one of Royal Tech's here. You might remember William from doing the long haul series a few years back. He did that one on a 450, but before that, we did one on, I did mine on a 360. He rode his Yamaha XS400 back from Ohio, so that was kind of a long trip in the middle of the summer on a small bike, but definitely doable. And we wanted to show people you could do it. I think that's a good question, weird struggles. Well, first of all, I had the wrong tank on the bike. I didn't know that. I had a Honda tank on the bike. It wasn't until I found some photographs of what a 360 looks like, I realized I had the wrong tank and therefore had the wrong petcock. So I had to go find a tank, and it was missing the petcock. And finding a petcock was almost impossible at the time for the bike, and I had to go to a junkyard and dump out milk crate after milk crate after milk crate of like random petcocks at the junkyard until I found one that I thought that looks kind of right-ish, and it was pretty roached. I mean, it was rough. Actually, it's this petcock, but it was pretty bad, and the brass tubes had kind of broken off and corroded. It was missing, like the lever on it had been broken off. I had to go find another lever one. That was the only thing I could find at the time. And so I take this thing that should have been $1 or $2 at the junkyard because it was pretty bad. And I take it to the front of the guy, and this gruff old junkyard guy is like, 40 bucks. Like, oh, come on, man. Really? I mean, 40 bucks. I think I talked him down to 35, but I needed the part, right? I didn't have it. Had to go back home, like, retap the screw holes in it. I had to drill out the brass tubes and press new tubes into it. Like, I spent, I don't know, probably a weekend just trying to repair the original petcock so I had something to work. That was one that sticks out in my mind. Oh yeah, like now we can buy it brand new, right? So that wraps up the tour of my personal 1975 Honda CB360. Again, this is Brenden with Common Motor. Hope you all enjoyed this. If you like more of our content, make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter via our website. And of course, subscribe to us down below, right here on this YouTube channel, and we will see you next time.